Today we're visiting some of the old saloons out on the frontier. But here in the Old West, the saloon was more than just a place to wet your whistle. It was the heartbeat of the community. Stories were swapped, deals were made, and sometimes fists flew faster than the whiskey was poured. And the food served up in these establishments? Well, it wasn't that bad at all. So we're revisiting saloon foods with a twist and serving up some loaded brisket nachos. You know, being a cowboy and being out there on the trail for weeks on end, I mean, choking up dust, going through the rainstorms, everything in the world. When you went to town, what was the first place you looked for? The saloons. And the first saloon really ever created was in the 1820s in Browns Hole, Wyoming, serving fur trappers as they worked the Rockies. But by the time of the gold rush and the cattle drives, saloons had exploded across the West. Texas, Kansas, New Mexico, Arizona, every boomtown had at least one. And the wilder the town, the rowdier the saloon. Now these joints weren't just for whiskey, although there was plenty of that. Saloons were social centers, a place for cowboys, soldiers, outlaws, lawmen, miners, and ranchers to gather. Deals were struck, fights were settled or started, and legends were born. Now some of these saloons were quite fancy. Velvet curtains, chandeliers, and ladies in feathers singing from the balcony. Others, just a lean-to with a tarp and some pickled eggs floating in a jar. Now, if these old walls could talk, you'd probably hear fiddles playing, tall tales, gunfighting, and a lot of fists flying. Now, if y'all are ready to settle in and explore these old saloons, the 1800s and the frontier, hey, pull up a chair, give us a like for this video, and let's open them swinging doors and go in there and visit some of these old historic saloons. And first up, the Long Branch Saloon in Dodge City. It opened its doors in 1874, right in the middle of the cattle boom. It was a saloon of choice for cowboys, cattlemen, and a few fellas you might have heard of. Wyatt Earp, Doc Holliday, Bat Masterson, and lawman Charlie Bassett were known to frequent this establishment. They had piano music playing, poker games running, and the whiskey was flowing. Sadly, the place burned down in 1885, but it got a second life on television thanks to Gunsmoke, which is also the longest running Western on TV. And that's how legends live on. Now, if you were riding further north, you might find yourself at the Accidental Saloon in Buffalo, Wyoming. It opened in 1880. Now, this wasn't your typical dusty dive. No, sir. Crystal chandeliers, fine furnishings, and some of the best food a tired cowhand could dream of. But back in its prime, it was part saloon, part hotel, part gentleman's club. Upstairs had room for travelers and ranchers passing through. Downstairs, a full kitchen serving up steaks, stew, sourdough biscuits, and good strong coffee. Teddy Roosevelt, Buffalo Bill Cody, and even Butch Cassidy passed through those doors. Today, the Occidental is still standing. Then there's the Crystal Palace Saloon, down in Tombstone, Arizona territory. One of the crown jewels of the town that was more bullets than buildings when it was founded. It opened its doors in 1879, back when the silver was pouring out of the ground. Originally called the Golden Eagle Brewery, it was as fancy as they came on the frontier. Ornate woodwork, massive floor-to-ceiling mirrors, and a long mahogany bar that stretched nearly 50 feet. It had live music, gambling tables, fine cigars, and even a dining room where you could sit down to a meal of steak, oysters, or prime rib if your pockets was deep enough. Wyatt Earp, Doc Holliday, Virgil Earp, and Morgan Earp were regulars. In May of 1882, a massive fire swept through Tombstone, destroying most of Allen Street, including the Crystal Palace. Rebuilt in brick and stone, it became even more elegant. You can't talk saloons without mentioning the Bucket of Blood, right in the heart of Virginia City, Nevada. Opened in 1876, at the height of the Comstock Lode silver boom. Virginia City wasn't just some mining camp. It was the richest silver strike the world had ever seen. With that kind of money flying around, the town filled up with miners, outlaws, con men, and a whole lot of whiskey. Folks argued over the exact story, but the legend goes like this. One night there was such a bloody brawl that when the bartender came in the next morning, the sawdust on the floor was soaked through, and he said it looked like a whole bucket of blood had been spilled. The name stuck, but it wasn't all knives and knuckles. The bucket of blood was famous for its live music, with fiddles, banjos, and player pianos banging. Remarkably, the bucket of blood is still standing, rebuilt and reimagined, but still serving cold drinks and live music in the same town where Mark Twain once wrote for the local paper and vigilantes once ruled the streets. Let's talk about the food. Now, in honor of them old saloons, I am going to fix me up some great bar food today, which is loaded brisket nachos. God, it's going to be good. I can't hardly wait. I went down there to the grocery store, found the butcher, and I said he had trimmed some of the fat off of it he had, so I left what was remaining on there because there wasn't much. Took it out there about 40 minutes before I was going to cook it, just let it sit there on a cookie sheet. Then I seasoned it with some of our original seasoning, pretty heavy, but then I topped that back off with some of our rib rub. Now, if you ain't got those things, you could use you some salt, pepper, and garlic, and then just finish it off with your favorite barbecue seasoning. Let it sit there about another 40 minutes till you see that meat begin to sweat because we want that seasoning to penetrate. So I went out there and fired up the Legacy, put all the coals on one end because I'm cooking this brisket indirect. But I ain't got time to be cooking none of these 12 or 14 hour cooks today. I got a lot going on. And I'm gonna put that brisket on the smoker and I'm gonna let it go 45 minutes to an hour. I just want it to get that good smoked flavor. Now I added some hickory wood to it to give it that extra bit of flavor. And then I'm gonna finish it off in what? Grandma's favorite utensil. What are we talking about? The crock pot. But you gotta preheat that thing. Plug her in, turn her on high. I'm adding me about 2 cups of beef broth because I want this brisket to fall nearly plumb apart because this is nachos. We ain't slicing it. But if you hadn't got a crock pot and you ain't got, smoker or no grill, you can do this in the oven. Just all you got to do, preheat that oven to about 300 degrees. After you've got that brisket well seasoned, go ahead and put your little beef broth in there, slide it in there, cover it. Let it go about 3.5 to 4 hours. Pull that foil off of it and let it cook until you can take a fork and run in there and that meat just begin to fall apart. If you're talking nachos, you're talking cheese. Now, I'm not talking about that stuff you're pumping out of the jar that's fake. That is Shan's favorite stuff, but ain't no telling what that's got in it. It might have diesel for all I know. I'm talking about real cheese sauce, but made with what? 3 different kinds of cheese. That's what you gotta go for. First off, smoked Gouda. So we're gonna get that grated in there. It takes a little while. Now, you're gonna be real careful when you get down there to the end, not grate your knuckles off in there with it. And if you get down here and it gets pretty thin, just break them pieces up because all this is going to melt together and you're telling yourself, that's a lot of cheese. What is a nacho if it's not got cheese on it? Have I ever scrimped on meat or cheese? Ask Duker. He'll tell you no. Duker, wake up. It's cheese time. 16 ounces of shredded cheddar. We're talking cheese sauce, but what would cheese sauce not be if you didn't have some cream cheese? But my favorite kind to put in this, look at there. Chives and onion. Whew, gives it so much flavor it does. We're just gonna dump it right there on top. There's 8 ounces left in here. Duker, it is meeting your approval. I'm gonna take it to the fire and let it begin to melt. And when it's all blended in really good and you can sort of stir it around, It ain't sticking nowhere. Nobody wants burnt cheese. Time to add some liquid. And we're using heavy cream today. I'm just going to add a little as I go along. We want this to come out more like a gravy consistency than anything else. So let me get rid of that for just a minute. And you can't walk off and leave this. You got to get this to going. And you're going to have to come back, I promise you, and add more liquid to it than you think. Warm your cream up, because when that cold cream is hitting that hot cheese, I'm just having to start over every time. So it'll make a difference if you'll just warm it up just a tad. Now, one other thing, if you run out of cream or you ain't got nothing to thin it with, take some of that beef broth you had on that brisket and just go to adding it. It'll jump out and get you, it will. You want to get this to your desired consistency, but you want it to be able to where it'll drizzle really good. Now I'm gonna move this over here. We may have to thin it just a little more before come assembly time, but I got me some beans. Did y'all see that coming? This is like a full meal deal. Now I took a can of black beans, drained them, rinsed them, and then a can of ranch style beans. I just let them drain right through that colander and pour them in there because I want them warm. Won't take them beans long to warm. We'll set them aside, get that brisket to going. We're gonna assemble up. Now some barkeeps figured out that if you fed folks salty food, well, they'd drink more. So the free lunch was born. You'd pay a nickel for a beer and get a plate full of food to go with it. And it wasn't just scraps either. There was hard cheese, salted meat, pickled eggs, beans, bread, and maybe even a pot of stew if the barkeep was feeling generous. But whatever it was, it had to be salty. They weren't feeding out of kindness. They wanted to get those patrons thirsty and stay thirsty. And for cowboys coming off the trail with no home kitchen, that saloon plate was often a welcome sight from the same old beans Cook had been making on the chuck wagon. So let's fast forward to today, and you go in any bar, any pub, and what do you see? It's still there. Salty food. Yeah, we have pretzels, we have chicken wings, but also nachos. But hey, nachos weren't even born until the 1940s. A group of American military wives crossed over into Piedras Negras, Mexico for a day trip. They arrived at the Victory Club late in the afternoon, just after the kitchen had already closed. But instead of turning them away, Ignacio Anaya, nicknamed Nacho, got creative. He went into the kitchen himself and threw together a few simple ingredients he had on hand. Fresh tortilla chips, fried from corn tortillas, slices of Colby cheese, one of the few cheeses available locally at the time, and pickled jalapenos. He melted the cheese over the chips, topped it with the jalapenos, and served it hot. When the women asked what this dish was called, being humble, he replied, "Well, let's just call them Nachos Especiales." The name stuck, and eventually shortened to just nachos. By the 1950s and 60s, nachos started showing up in the border state and restaurants across Texas and the Southwest. In 1976, a version of nachos with pumped cheddar cheese sauce was introduced at the Texas Rangers baseball games, turning them into a stadium and concession stand staple. Got our chopped meat here in this bowl. Remember them beans we had warmed up? We're gonna go ahead and add them to it. Dump them in there. Now, this part is optional, but I like to use it. It don't take much. I'm gonna use a little of our barbecue sauce, and I ain't gonna put much in there. I just need just a little flavor. This is about 4 pounds of meat, so we'll go to stirring that up and see where we're at. But you want to be able to make sure that you're getting beans and meat in every bite. That's what throw this over the hump of the road to making it not an appetizer, a full meal deal. Because if you got beans and meat, I'd say you're in pretty good shape. done deal it is, and I'm talking about that is a skillet full. Now I figure this might feed 8 to 10. Shan's saying 12 to 15, maybe even 28. So whatever kind of vessel you use to put this in, whether it's a full pan, big old sheet pan, something like this, but you want to come about 3 layers deep. That way it just keeps mounding up. And hey, I done finished it off with some pickled okra. There is some meat, some cheese, jalapeno, avocado, and a chip. Majy. I'm telling you, Mage, that is some fine dining right there, folks. Get you some napkins, because you're going to need it with this meal. It'll get all in your mustache, your beard, everything you got, but so easy to put together. All our recipes you can find on our website, and whatever we used in the video will be linked down there below the description. But it is with great pride, honor, and privilege that I tip my hat to that old flag and all the servicemen and women and all the veterans that have kept it flying. But also, I tip my hat to all them folks that built them first saloons, whether they be a lean-to or something fancy, and all them old barkeeps and the cooks that they had in there. We wouldn't have the food we have today if we hadn't had cowboys coming off the trail drive and going in there and trying out what was going on. Rest of you get on up in here. I don't know, can I pick this skillet up, but I'm gonna try. I can't, it's too heavy. God bless you, each and every one, and I'll see you down the loaded nacho trail. Get in here. Come on. Dooker, you was asleep most of the video, so you're gonna get that little bite. Mage, since you've been working hard, you're gonna get that one. Lulu, you're hiding under there. Come on, get on out here. You gotta come get it. Atta girl. Good help.